What initially appeared to be a tragic accident soon unraveled into a story of secrets, betrayals, and a shocking romance that ended in murder and a hidden pregnancy. Hannah Guilford, an 18-year-old in her senior year of high school in Kokomo, Indiana, lived a life marked by a mix of triumphs and challenges. As the star of the Kokomo Community High School cheerleading team, Hannah was adored by her peers and admired for her dazzling halftime routines. Her radiant personality and athletic prowess earned her the nickname Spark, and she frequently appeared in local newspapers highlighting her achievements in cheerleading competitions. Hannah dreamed of attending college to study kinesiology and becoming a physical therapist for athletes. Hannah lived with her parents, Randolph Randy Guilford, 38, and Katrina Guilford, 34, in a cozy suburban home. Randy, a sales manager and former talented football player whose career had been cut short by an injury, projected his unfulfilled aspirations onto Hannah, pressuring her to achieve perfection in both cheerleading and academics. Meanwhile, Katrina, who had once been an energetic presence at Hannah's practices, had gradually grown distant. Her struggles with alcoholism and feelings of inadequacy led her to withdraw, creating tension at home. Beneath her cheerful facade, Hannah harbored a consuming secret. She was in a romantic relationship with her cheerleading coach, Eric Masterson, a charismatic and influential figure in the school's athletic program. Their forbidden relationship became more complicated when Hannah discovered she was pregnant by him. Confused and terrified, she confided in no one, not even her closest friends, fearing the scandal that would erupt if the truth came out. In the weeks leading up to her death, Hannah's life was a whirlwind of activities and mounting anxiety. While preparing for final exams, fulfilling her cheerleading commitments, and making decisions about her future, her friends noticed she seemed unusually worried, with her typically radiant smile replaced by bouts of sadness. At home, arguments between her parents intensified, with her father's constant pressure and her mother's addiction creating a volatile environment. The final days of Hannah's life were a heartbreaking blend of hope and despair. She dreamed of freeing herself from the secrets and pressures that dominated her life, envisioning a future where she could embrace her passions and newfound responsibilities. Tragically, those dreams were shattered by the devastating events that followed. On May 12, 2016, around 7:30 a.m., Randy Guilford went down to the basement of his Kokomo, Indiana home, expecting to find his daughter Hannah preparing for a new school day. Instead, he stumbled upon a scene that would change his life forever. Hannah's lifeless body lay at the foot of the stairs, surrounded by cheerleading equipment and trophies from her competitions. The basement, once a source of pride showcasing Hannah's achievements, had become the site of a devastating tragedy. Randy froze, unable to process what he was seeing. The 38-year-old sales manager who had devoted so much energy to motivating his daughter to succeed felt a wave of disbelief and panic. After a few agonizing moments, he rushed to his daughter searching for signs of life, but it was clear Hannah had passed away. The vibrant young woman who had been the center of his world lay motionless at his feet, trying to regain composure. Randy dialed 911. "My daughter, she's not breathing," he stammered, his voice breaking with emotion as he tried to describe what he had found. The operator asked for details, but Randy could barely concentrate, consumed by the horrifying reality that Hannah would never fulfill the dreams she had worked so hard for. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and confirmed the worst. Hannah was dead. The basement once filled with life was now eerily silent, broken only by Randy's labored breathing and the faint hum of a TV upstairs. Meanwhile, Katrina Guilford, Hannah's mother, was still asleep in her bedroom, groggy after a night of heavy drinking. It wasn't until Randy's anguished cries echoed through the house that she woke up, disoriented and confused. When the reality of what had happened became clear, her heart-wrenching screams shattered the morning calm, adding another layer of pain to the tragic loss now engulfing the Guilford family. The Kokomo police arrived at the residence around 8 a.m. in response to Randy's emergency call. Leading the investigation was Detective Briel Reno, an experienced officer with more than 5 years on the force, known for her sharp instincts and no-nonsense demeanor. The sudden death of a popular high school cheerleader like Hannah Guilford was bound to shock the entire community. As Reno and her team descended into the basement, they were greeted by a scene that immediately raised suspicions. Hannah's body was at the foot of the stairs, surrounded by cheerleading equipment, including trophies and pom-poms. While her injury suggested a fall, the position of her limbs and the absence of blood at the scene indicated something far more sinister. The dimly lit basement, with morning light filtering through small windows, was adorned with photos and ribbons celebrating Hannah's cheerleading career. Despite the appearance of a tragic accident, Reno's trained eye noticed several inconsistencies. The room was disordered, but nothing seemed out of place or disrupted, unusual for a fall severe enough to cause death. Forensic technicians began examining the area, taking photographs and collecting evidence. A large trophy near Hannah's body drew particular attention. It bore slight stains that could be fingerprints, and due to its weight was a plausible murder weapon. Reno ordered it to be tagged and sent for analysis. The investigation extended to the rest of the house. In the living room, the television was still broadcasting Good Morning America, its cheerful tone contrasting starkly with the tragedy. Katrina Guilford sat on the couch, her face pale and haggard. On the coffee table was a half-empty vodka bottle, a grim reminder of her ongoing struggle with alcoholism. Randy paced back and forth, visibly shaken but cooperative with the officers. That same day, the preliminary forensic report revealed an unexpected twist. Hannah was not only pregnant, but also a carrier of HIV. This discovery deepened the mystery surrounding her death. Investigators began probing her relationships, including her troubling and forbidden affair with her married cheerleading coach, Eric Masterson, a man with considerable influence in the school district. Reno's instincts told her that Hannah's death was no accident. The combination of her pregnancy, her medical condition, and the unsettling details at the scene pointed to a much darker story. The first person Detective Brielle Reno focused on was Coach Eric Masterson. At 46, Masterson was the cheerleading coach at Kokomo Community High School, known for his authoritative demeanor and ability to inspire his team. He was a respected figure in the community, but Reno suspected that beneath his spotless reputation lay secrets he was desperate to keep hidden. At the police station, Masterson sat in a dimly lit interrogation room, a faint sheen of sweat forming on his forehead. The bare walls and the soft hum of the air conditioning heightened the tension in the room. At first, Masterson appeared cooperative, speaking with admiration about Hannah Guilford and describing her as one of the most talented and dedicated young women he had ever coached. "She had so much potential," he said with a tremor in his voice, the way she commanded attention on the floor. It was like she was born for it. Reno's question soon became more pointed. She asked Masterson about his personal relationship with Hannah and whether it extended beyond cheerleading practices. Masterson tensed up, but denied any inappropriate contact, claiming their relationship was strictly professional. However, his discomfort was evident. The breaking point came when Reno slid a folder across the table toward Masterson. Inside were copies of explicit text messages and photos exchanged between him and Hannah just days before her death. Masterson's confident facade crumbled as he stared at the evidence. His face turned pale and his hands trembled as he gripped the edges of the table. She made me feel like a dog in heat," he stammered. "But I never wanted it to go this far." Reno pressed further. "We know Hannah was pregnant, Coach Masterson," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The autopsy confirmed it, and the timeline points to you as the father." Masterson's jaw tightened and his breathing grew shallow. Before he could respond, Reno delivered another revelation. She also tested positive for HIV. The tests confirm she contracted it from you. The weight of these revelations crushed any composure Masterson had left. He buried his face in his hands, murmuring, "I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know I was positive." When Reno asked if Hannah was aware of his condition, he vehemently denied it. No, she didn't know I never wanted to hurt her. Despite his confessions, Masterson continued to deny any involvement in Hannah's death. He claimed to have no knowledge of her plans that morning and insisted their relationship, though inappropriate, had been consensual. However, his increasing agitation only heightened Reno's suspicions. At the end of the interrogation, Masterson was released while the investigation continued, but Reno made her stance clear. "You're at the center of this now, Coach," she said, with an unwavering gaze. "And I won't stop until I find out what happened to Hannah." Reno then turned her attention to Randolph. Randy Guilford, Hannah's father. A sales manager at a local car dealership and a prominent figure in Kokomo, Randy had a reputation for living vicariously through his daughter's achievements. A former high school athlete, his sports career had ended abruptly due to a back injury, leaving him with unfulfilled dreams that he projected onto Hannah. He pushed her relentlessly to excel, ensuring she was the star of the team. Randy's behavior raised suspicions from the start, though he presented himself as a grieving father. His constant questions about how the tragedy would affect Hannah's reputation and the family standing in the community overshadowed his mourning. During his interview, Randy insisted his role in Hannah's life was purely supportive. "She was the best," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Hannah was going places, and I made sure she had every opportunity." However, text messages recovered from Randy's phone revealed a disturbing dynamic. Randy had been aware of Hannah's inappropriate relationship with Coach Masterson, and in some cases, had even facilitated it. In one message, Randy suggested times for Hannah and Masters and to meet, offering to cover for her at home. Another message from Randy congratulated Masters, and after a standout performance by Hannah at a regional competition, disturbingly implying that their relationship had positively influenced her routines. When confronted with this evidence, Randy initially denied knowledge of the messages, but eventually admitted to being aware of the relationship. "I thought it was harmless," he muttered. "She was happy, and he cared about her success as much as I did." Despite his claims, his nervous demeanor was evident. Reno also probed Randy's reaction to discovering that Hannah was pregnant and HIV positive, facts revealed by the autopsy. Randy clenched his fists tightly and said through gritted teeth, "I didn't know. If I had, I would have stopped it." Randy's behavior suggested otherwise. Reno suspected that his obsession with the family's image, combined with his knowledge of Hannah's relationship with Masterson, might have driven him to act impulsively. By the end of the interview, it was clear to Reno that Randy was withholding crucial information, and his role in the events surrounding Hannah's death remained under intense scrutiny. Katrina Guilford, Hannah's mother, became the next focus of Detective Reno's investigation. At 34 years old, Katrina had once been a vibrant young woman, a former cheerleader and small-town beauty queen with a magnetic personality. By May 2016, she was a shadow of her former self, battling alcoholism and feelings of inadequacy, while her marriage to Randy had grown cold and distant. With Randy entirely focused on Hannah's cheerleading career, Katrina often felt invisible in her own home. Katrina's struggles with alcohol were an open secret in the community. Neighbors frequently saw her at the local liquor store, buying bottles of cheap wine and vodka. Her drinking had escalated to the point where sobriety was rare, and her erratic behavior had alienated friends and family. Her relationship with Hannah was strained as well. Katrina resented the immense pressure Randy placed on their daughter and felt jealous of the close bond between them. On the morning of Hannah's death, Katrina was home. She was the one who discovered Hannah's body in the basement and called 911. Her voice on the call was frantic and slurred with alcohol, and when officers arrived, they found her in a near-hysterical state, alternating between uncontrollable sobbing and heart-wrenching screams. Her disheveled appearance and the smell of alcohol on her breath immediately raised concerns. During her interview with Detective Reno, Katrina's behavior was erratic. She fluctuated between emotional outbursts and moments of unsettling calm. When asked about her relationship with Hannah, her responses were inconsistent. "Hannah was my baby," she repeated over and over, but when Reno pressed her about the days leading up to her daughter's death, Katrina gave vague and fragmented answers. When the topic of Coach Masterson came up, Katrina's demeanor changed drastically. Her face twisted with rage as she launched into a tirade, accusing her daughter of stealing Master's attention. "Hannah was always the perfect little girl," she spat bitterly. "But she had no right to take what was mine. That man was supposed to love me." Her words revealed a latent envy that bordered on obsession. As the interrogation continued, Katrina's agitation grew. When Reno cautiously suggested that Hannah's death might not have been an accident, Katrina exploded, shouting incoherent denials before collapsing into tears. Her instability and emotional volatility made her a person of interest, as Reno couldn't ignore the possibility that her deep-seated resentments and deteriorating mental state could have led to tragedy. On May 18, 2016, just 1 week after Hannah's death, an unexpected event occurred during her memorial service at the high school gymnasium. Hundreds of mourners gathered to honor the life of the young cheerleader. The atmosphere was somber, with heartfelt tributes and moving speeches, but it was an unexpected outburst from Randy Guilford that left the crowd in stunned silence, visibly intoxicated and emotionally distressed. Randy abruptly stood up in the middle of the service. Slurring his words but speaking clearly enough to be understood, he confessed that he knew his wife Katrina had killed their daughter. In a moment of raw emotion, Randy admitted that he had helped Katrina stage the scene to look like an accident in a desperate attempt to shield the family from public scandal. Shock rippled through the room as mourners struggled to process the revelation. Detective Reno, who had attended the service to discreetly observe the family's behavior, immediately realized the case had reached a critical turning point. Following Randy's confession, officers from the Kokomo Police Department detained him for further questioning. Investigators also returned to the Guilford home with a renewed perspective on what they might find. This time, as they re-examined the basement, they discovered traces of blood that had not been adequately cleaned, along with additional fragments of a broken trophy that had gone unnoticed during the initial investigation. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood matched Hannah's DNA. The evidence combined with Randy's detailed confession painted a harrowing picture of the events. Investigators determined that Katrina had struck Hannah with the trophy during a heated argument. Overwhelmed by fear and loyalty, Randy had assisted Katrina in covering up the crime. Together they had staged the scene to look like a tragic accident, placing Hannah's body at the foot of the stairs and scattering her cheerleading equipment to reinforce the narrative. On May 20th, 2016, just 38 hours after Randy's confession, authorities officially identified Katrina Guilford as the prime suspect in her daughter's murder. Katrina, a 34-year-old homemaker struggling with severe alcoholism, had been a troubled figure in the community. Her erratic behavior and strained relationship with Hannah were well known among neighbors and friends, but the truth about her involvement in her daughter's death devastated many. Detective Briel Reynaud led the operation to take Katrina into custody. The arrest occurred early that morning under overcast skies that mirrored the grim tension among the officers. When Katrina opened the door, her appearance was disheveled, and she looked visibly aged, as though the weight of her guilt had taken its toll in the days following the memorial service. She offered little resistance and surrendered quietly. As the handcuffs were placed on her wrists, Katrina broke down in tears, not out of surprise but resignation. It seemed as though she knew the truth had finally caught up with her. As she was escorted to the police car, the usually lively suburban neighborhood fell into an eerie silence. Only the distant hum of morning traffic broke the stillness. At the police station, Katrina was formally charged with her daughter's murder. During her initial interrogation, she was emotional, but surprisingly cooperative. providing a chilling account of the events leading to the killing. According to Katrina, it all began with a heated argument on the night of Hannah's death. Deeply intoxicated, Katrina confronted her daughter in a jealous rage over Hannah's supposed romance with Coach Masterson, a relationship Katrina had secretly desired for herself. The argument escalated quickly, and in a moment of blind fury, Katrina grabbed one of Hannah's trophies and struck her, delivering a fatal blow. Katrina grabbed one of Hannah's trophies and struck her, delivering a fatal blow. Panicked, she called Randy, who returned home to find their daughter lifeless. Consumed by fear and desperation, the couple decided to cover up the crime. Together, they moved Hannah's body to the foot of the stairs and scattered her cheerleading equipment to make it appear as though she had suffered a fatal fall. Randy hoped this would protect the family from scandal, but his conscience ultimately drove him to confess. Katrina's arrest sent shockwaves through the close-knit community of Kokomo. The Gilford family, once admired for their apparent success and unity, was now exposed as deeply fractured and troubled. The community struggled to reconcile the image of a proud mother with the horrific act of taking her own daughter's life. The trial of Katrina Gilford for the murder of her daughter began in late August 2018 at the Jackson County Courthouse in Kokomo, Indiana. The case drew extensive media coverage, turning it into a local spectacle. The courtroom was packed with spectators, many of whom had known the Gilford family for years, and sought closure for the tragedy that had shaken their community. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Luno, portrayed Katrina as a woman consumed by jealousy and resentment over her daughter's relationship with Coach Masterson, a bond she had coveted for herself. Luna emphasized the brutality of the act, describing how Katrina had struck Hannah with a trophy and then enlisted Randy to stage the scene to look like an accident. Forensic evidence and Randy's confession formed the backbone of the case, leaving little room for doubt. The defense, headed by public defender Leah Boone Ranch, argued that Katrina's actions were not premeditated, but the result of a moment of clouded judgment, fueled by years of emotional anguish, alcoholism, and a confrontation that spiraled out of control. Boone Ranch depicted Katrina as a woman overwhelmed by her circumstances, a mother who had reached her breaking point. She urged the jury to consider Katrina's history of mental health issues and addiction, asking for leniency, and presenting her actions as those of a deeply flawed but broken person. Throughout the trial, Hannah's classmates, teammates, and friends attended to show their support for the family. Their grief was palpable as they listened to testimony, painting conflicting images of Katrina as a loving mother who had lost her way, and as a jealous woman whose emotions had spiraled into violence. After 2 days of deliberations, the jury returned a verdict of guilty for second-degree murder. Katrina Gilford was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a bittersweet sense of closure to Hannah's friends and family, though the community remained divided. Some believed justice had been served, that Katrina's punishment was fitting for the severity of the crime. Others argued that her actions, while horrific, were the result of untreated issues, and that the sentence was excessively harsh. For Andy Gilford, the trial marked the final unraveling of his family. His own complicity in covering up the crime left him grappling with guilt and the daunting task of rebuilding his life after such a tragic and public fall. In the years that followed, the community of Kokomo was irrevocably changed. The story of Hannah Gilford became a somber reminder for all, a cautionary tale of how envy, anger, and betrayal can destroy even the most cherished bonds.